Here again, as you know, board certified family and obesity medicine doc with over 23 years of clinical experience in the healthcare arena, here with another post-podcast interview. And today I'm joined with an expert of processed food addictions, Joan Ifland, PhD. So I'm going to introduce her in a moment. She's sitting here right next to me. She was actually my guest on the Protecting the Nest podcast, and she shared a wealth of information as it relates to processed food addiction. That episode of the podcast will be available on August the 21st, which is Friday. So make sure to check that out. And if you know anybody in your family, even yourself, who thinks that maybe I have a little bit of a food addiction, this episode is for you, because Dr. Ifland is going to give us the diagnostic criteria. Yes, I said it. There's a diagnostic criteria for food addiction, which most of us did not know about. So I'm really excited about that. I also want to share that me and Dr. Ifland is going to be doing the virtual San Diego 2020 Metabolic Health Conference. That's about low carb and metabolic health. That's going to be August 27th through the 30th. We'll probably have a day when we share our message. And it's sponsored by Low Carb USA. You may have heard of them. And so if you haven't signed up for that, it's at www.lowcarbusa.org. You can register. And for those who are clinical, yes, you can get continuing medical education credits for that. And guess what? It's only $79 for a event that lasts for 3 days. And they have a lot of people that you've met and heard of in the low carb community. So I just wanted to do a shout out to Low Carb USA for allowing both of us to participate in a virtual conference. Normally, that conference would be in San Diego, so I won't get a chance to go down to San Diego to enjoy their weather, but we're doing okay in Chicago. So let me tell you about Dr. Ifland. She has been creating breakthroughs in recovery from food addiction, starting in 1999 with her first book, and in 2018 with her textbook, Processed Food Addiction, Foundations, Assessment, and Recovery. And that was published by CRC Press. She's currently working on evidence-based trainings for health professionals like myself. So in other words, teaching us how to help a patient who has a food addiction, especially when you're like me, because as you know, I'm really into reducing the obesity problems in the country, the diabetes problems, and you really got to help people with their, food addictions if they have it. She's a fellow of the American College of Nutrition. She earned her PhD in addictive nutrition at Union Institute and University. That was 2010. Her MBA is at Stanford Business School in 1978, and her BA is in economics and political science at Oberlin College. That was in 1974. So she's even been in the Oprah network as it relates to food addiction specialists on a book of John Gray. So she's really gotten out there and gotten really well known. She has online resources. We'll touch base with that at the end of this. The Addiction Reset Community, ARC. She's been doing that at foodaddictionreset.com. So keep that in mind. She's founded sites which provide free services, including a Facebook group to support people. It's called Food Addiction Education since 2014. And if you need some handouts that you want to walk away with, you want to go to foodaddictionresources.com. She does a reset week, which is an online live video program for withdrawal from processed foods. And as we talked during the podcast, she said it was important to have resources that help you during your journey because it doesn't go away. She also has a meal prep menu, which a lot of people always ask about. What should I eat and all of that kind of stuff. And it really helps you to manage your meals. So it's really important to have an expert who understands food addiction. It's important to know what the heck that is. So as we get started, I'm going to let Dr. Ifland kind of introduce herself, and then maybe share why you should trust her. And then secondarily, I'll pull up some slides that we'll walk through, and we're gonna go to class so we can understand what this food addiction thing is all about. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for being with me on the podcast and on this live stream. I have learned so much since I've found the low carb community. And again, it's not just about low carb, it's about metabolic health, and it's about thinking outside the box. And if you're not willing to think outside the box, you'll be stuck in the same place. And then you'll look back and your life will be over and you'll be wishing you had done something different. So Dr. Ifland, go ahead and share who you are. And as you talk, I'll put us in the corner and get some slides on the screen.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Tony Hampton. You are a hero of all the people, the millions of people, the hundreds of millions of people who are suffering. And processed food addiction hurts. It takes over your life, and then you're just kind of in this cobweb of bondage to the food. And people have had this experience where they feel like there's a robot or a monster inside of them controlling their behavior. All addictions are like that. So I feel like the luckiest person on the planet. I don't know how I got picked. I don't know. I had a very rough childhood, I have to say. And I do have two wonderful daughters. I'm very grateful for them. But the thing that, aside from my daughters, the thing that I'm really proud about is this textbook.
Yeah.
So why would I be so proud of this textbook?
Wow.
Because people have just gone through the mill with things that don't work or can't work or could never have worked. And it's because they were addressing the wrong problem. So the most important thing to know about me, I think, is that I have an answer. I have a new answer. It's incredibly, there are 2,000 citations in this textbook. It's fully supported by science. It's evidence-based, and it works. It works where nothing else has worked. It's a very, very new approach to getting control of eating. I know whenever I hear somebody read my background, I think, oh, who could possibly understand? Why do I have an undergraduate degree in political science and economics? Why did I work for a state government for 2 years on their fiscal staff? And why did I go back and get that MBA? And why did I work for a corporation for 5 years? I'm the daughter of a corporate executive and a scientist. How does that all fit together? Well, I think the most important thing to know about me is that I do get all those angles. I have all the right buttons pushed for exactly what I do, which is I explain to people how the tobacco industry came into processed foods, bought Kraft, Nabisco, General Foods inside of a couple of years, and brought their tobacco addiction model to sugar, gluten, flour, processed fats, dairy, excessive salt, caffeine, and food additives. And the same way they got hundreds of millions of people to smoke is the same way they're getting hundreds of millions of people to be overweight and obese. So I think, I don't know, that's such a cool question. Nobody's ever asked me that question. But why? What is it that you should know about me? It is that I have wonderful mentors. My co-editors on the textbook were also on my doctoral committee. And one of them said to me, he said, if you write the textbook, people will think that you're the world's leading authority in the field. I said, well, okay. It's fine with me. I'll do that. Yep.
Yeah.
3 years, looking at about 6,000 studies. But now we just have a definitive answer. This book is the end of the debate about whether processed food addiction exists. I think if I wanted to be recognized for something, or if I wanted to be defined as something, that's what I would go for. That's a really good question.
Well, I appreciate your answer, because there's a need for something tangible that the health systems can hold on to, that the clinicians can hold on to, and as we walk through your slides, that our patients and community can hold on to.
Yeah.
So I think that we needed this because people just don't want to believe it. And for those patients who are suffering and are being told, exercise more, eat less, you're not trying hard enough, you're not motivated enough.
It's horrible.
Maybe we're not telling them what they need to do. And we really need to look in the mirror and say, maybe we haven't done a good job if there's so many people struggling.
Oh, Tony, no, don't do that. The health professions have not been trained. I think you've done everything you can do. Absolutely. You're trying really, really hard, and your patients are trying really, really hard. But now you've got the right model.
I like that. So I received that because
Okay.
I didn't know what I knew until I actually stepped outside the box and started to get some additional education myself. And my colleagues are too busy on the hamster wheel just working to have a moment. And when they do go get continuing medical education, it's not at a low carb USA conference, it's at the traditional models that don't even talk about these things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the slides. And why don't you tell me what this first slide represents for you?
So what are the signs? Like people, I know the first question they're going to ask is, well, do I have this? Does this explain why weight loss and eating disorder programs don't work? So it's easy. There are 11 signs. We're going to go through 11 signs of addiction to processed foods. And then I'm going to talk about 10 factors that make it harder to get over. So we'll rock these slides. Okay, so it's an addiction. It's not overeating. And what you have in an addiction to processed foods is the same signs that you would have in addiction to alcoholism. It's the same. So these diagnostic criteria are lifted and adapted from the American Psychiatric Association criteria for alcoholism, which is another caloric addictive substance. Yeah. So the first one is I've eaten when I didn't intend to. I opened the box. I was going to eat one. I ate the box. I bought enough potato chips for 3 days and I ate them as soon as I got home. I bought something at the vending machine that I didn't want to eat, that I promised myself that morning I wouldn't eat. So this is, I'm going to have one bowl of cereal, but somehow you keep adding the milk and the sugar and the cereal and the milk and the sugar and cereal until you've eaten many, many bowls. Unintended use. 2, I have tried to cut back and failed, and this is probably almost every American. 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. I have seen research showing that 30% of Americans are dieting at any given time. It all fails. We do have a pretty good study showing that like 98% of weight loss attempts result in weight regain. So almost everybody has this sign of processed food addiction. So I spend a lot of time, and this creeps up on us slowly. I'm thinking about it. I'm planning for it. I'm either getting it or eating it or recovering from eating it. And I don't seem to have time for anything else. So this is one of their criteria. And addictions creep up slowly over time. And this one is one of them. I crave. So I have urges, I have longings, I have desires, I want it, I'm resisting it, I am craving, and everybody's got this. Everybody thinks about food too much, more than they want to.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
And then processed foods make it hard for me to fulfill roles. That just means that I'm thinking about going to get something to eat instead of doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or I'm too sick to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not going to apply for a promotion. I can't get down on the floor with my kids. I don't want to go out with my partner or do things because I'm too sick, I'm too tired, I'm too depressed, I'm too brain fog, I'm too, my self-esteem is too low. And yet I keep eating.
That's right. And I pass every single one of these places on the way to work every day.
Yes, I know. This is a technique called surround marketing, which
Yeah.
we talked about in the podcast. I want everybody to know that Dr. Tony Hampton just did an extraordinary job on the podcast. So
Thank you.
please find it.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to remind everybody that when we do a post podcast show, the content on the podcast is completely different. But more importantly, it's a great way to just absorb information as you're driving to work. And your time is valuable. And so if you think about this podcast, there's somebody that you know that needs this information, who's been feeling guilty, and now you're going to gift them with that just by saying, just go to this podcast and listen to this.
Yeah, gift them with the release from the guilt.
Yeah, and we need to do that because we are not just learning, but we want to heal our minds and our spirits.
Yeah. So if you have problems in relationships that come from eating, like, I just don't want to be around my partner because I'm thinking about what I've got stashed in the laundry room, or I can't wait for everybody to go to bed so that I can binge. People don't like to binge in front of other people unless it's a binge partner. Right. Or my partner wants me to stop eating and I can't. It's causing problems.
Wow. Okay. Well, the relationship part, that's a no-brainer. We have to be in healthy relationships.
Yeah. Healthy relationships are actually the antidote.
Yeah.
I've given up on activities because of my eating. I'm unsightly. I don't want to go, and I'm too tired to go. I don't like those people anyway, and I'm pretty sure they don't like me. I can't pay attention to what they're saying. There's something wrong with my attention span. And so you just don't go. You've given up things that you used to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And I eat when it's hazardous to do so. A lot of eating and driving, or eating knowing that it makes you sleepy and driving anyway. There is such a thing as blackout eating. It's not covered in the research, but it's covered in the food addiction 12-step groups. I know that this will drive up my blood sugar and I'm going to eat it anyway. Or my doctor, that's hazardous.
It is. Every time I travel, I do so much better when I avoid eating. So I actually, since I'm an intermittent faster, and I know and I think maybe I'll pause with that. You said during the podcast, that's probably not the best way to go for people who have a true addiction. So you mentioned that, and I just want to put that out there as I share this story. But I always delay eating or eat minimum when I travel because it just puts you to sleep. I will say this, when I eat the right foods, it's not such a big, you feel it a little bit, but not nearly as much as when you eat those starches and sugars. So
even when I know there are consequences, like my doctor said, if you keep eating this way, you're going to have a heart attack or amputations from diabetes or lose your sight, even kidney failure, or more weight gain. And yet these things, but you can't stop.
Right. And a lot of clinicians are frustrated with this because they don't understand the food addiction. They just, look at the patient and say, man, I can't get them to do these things. And I just told them that their kidneys are going to fail. So this one resonates with me.
Yeah. I eat more than I used to. So this is progression. It's just processed foods cause the shutdown of pleasure functions in the brain. It's called downregulation, and it's progressive. So you're eating more and more and more to try to get that stimulation, to try to get that pleasure. So you used to buy this size container, now you're buying that size container. You used to stop once, now you're stopping twice. You used to eat it only in the evening, and now you're eating it all day long. It gets worse.
Yeah. Okay.
And the last one is about withdrawal. When I stop eating this stuff or drinking it, because it's particularly true for caffeinated drinks, I get sick. I get a headache. I get a stomach ache. I get anxiety. I get irritability. I get depression. So that's withdrawal.
Yeah.
That's using substances. This is not about food. It's not hunger at all. It's a substance addiction profile.
Yeah. I actually just did a YouTube video about how to deal with carbohydrate withdrawal. And because you're going to have it if your body's been using starch and sugar as its primary fuel. So it's nice to kind of put those pieces together with this.
Yeah, good. They just want everybody to know that this is not your fault. This is the tobacco/food industry teaching through television, through advertising, through addictive product formulation from a very young age that to teach those reward neurons to explode with releases of addictive neurotransmitters in your brain. You didn't ask for that. Nobody called you up and said, would you like to be addicted? No, nobody ever did that.
That's right. It was what our parents fed us, is what the commercials fed us, is what the, our entire surrounding fed us. So it's definitely not our fault. So
exactly. So 6 or more yeses to those 11 questions indicates the presence of a severe addiction. And 4 or 5 is a moderate addiction. 2 or 3 is a mild addiction. You want to do stuff now. You don't want this addiction to get to the point where it's 6.
Right.
You want to start getting the processed foods out of your house and getting the cueing out of your house, the triggering out of your house. So once you know where you stand, like you might be watching this and you're just like, oh my goodness, I've got an addiction. I don't have overeating. I don't have an eating disorder. I might have childhood issues, but that's not what is driving this. I am trying hard enough and I am motivated enough. I've just never had the right program.
And I want to say this. I was at the gym a couple of days ago, and more in a personal building gym. And I saw an overweight young lady who was there when I got there on the treadmill, and she was there when I left on the treadmill. You can't say that person's not motivated.
Oh gosh, no. I mean, that's the heartache.
It would be insane to say that. So
no, that is the heartache.
Yeah, that
is the heartache. They're turning themselves inside out to make this problem go away, and they're not getting the right environment. It's the right environment.
That's right. All
right. We're going to go through some of the factors that might make this harder to get rid of.
Okay.
So if you have lost and regained weight, research shows that it's harder to lose the weight again.
That makes sense. I've seen that in my practice.
Mm-hmm. So if you started as a child, it just means that there have been more decades when the tobacco/food industry was pounding, this is called Pavlovian conditioning, but repeat exposure to triggers and to addictive substances. It's going to take longer. The game is to reprogram those neurons not to crave and not to overreact. So the more neurons that you have addicted, the longer it's going to take to stop the lapsing. And if you eat more than one kind of substance, which everybody does, I mean, just think of all the fast food meals have all of the addictive substances in them. It's going to take longer because you've got to resolve many, many addictions, and not just like if you were a drinker, you would be solving alcoholism. But if you were a drinker and did a lot of other kinds of drugs, you've got to resolve each one of those addictions.
And it's amazing when you think about combining the sugar with the fat and that's just like literally a bomb. Your brain, your body, it's just like overload, and it's too much to easily recover from.
Yeah. It takes a long time. They overeat in reaction to everything, temptation, emotions, advertising, relationships, fatigue, stress. I'm always reaching for it. It's another indicator that you've got a bigger field of addicted neurons. It's going to take longer. You've got to reprogram literally each one. I ate fast food or convenience foods at least one meal. This is an indication that you're eating these substances in combination. Research shows that it's harder to break an addiction to fast food.
Wow. So if you eat fast food at least once a week, in other words, you're trying to discourage us from eating fast food once a week. That's what I'm hearing. And that if you do,
I mean, you're talking about, you're talking about the 7 most addictive substances: sugar,
right,
flour, gluten, processed fat, excessive salt, dairy, caffeine, and then food additives. So we know about the 7, and then you have food additives, which nobody knows. They're not on the label. So this is worse than smoking. Like if you smoke a cigarette once a week, and you say like, well, that's okay, I just do it once a week. No, you're going to hurt yourself every time.
That's fair. And I think you're right. It's just so many people exceed this number, but
oh gosh, there are kids who have eaten fast food 3 meals a day for their entire lives. There are young adults now who've eaten fast food 3 meals a day for their entire lives.
Yeah, I can see that's a problem. You know, I think that COVID did train some of us to cook. So I think that's a good side effect, is that it's rare that we eat out now. So
yes,
that's been helpful. Yeah. So
I actually really ramped up a Facebook group we have called Food Addiction Education the Food. I've just been taking pictures of my meals and posting them there.
Nice.
So people, you get just like,
yeah, just keep it simple.
Have a chicken burger and some blueberries for breakfast. Have a chicken burger and some green beans for lunch. Have a chicken burger and blueberries for snack, and then for dinner. It's so simple and easy and quick and cheap.
Right. That's
right.
Yeah. It's and actually, I have some ribs in the oven as we speak. It's not
exactly. High quality fat.
Easy. It's
protein.
Like I know. Sauce and Mike, I stay away from the sauces, but you put it in the oven and it's like
you come back in an hour. Yeah, you fill up your crock pot. You come back in a couple hours. Fill up the crock pot when you're leaving for work or when you're sitting down for work.
It cooks itself.
So simple. So if your household members eat processed foods in front of you, it's going to take longer because you've got to train them to stop doing that.
Right.
Wow. If if most of your friends and family eat processed foods, it's going to take longer. You've got to train them to stop triggering you before you can get enough triggering out of your environment to get your brain to calm down, to train your brain to be calm.
And the irony is that they think that they're being loving when they bring you somebody.
Oh God!
Because it's like
that. Have this snort of cocaine. It's really good. I got it good. I know it's your favorite kind. No.
That's right.
I fear failure or judgment when entering a weight loss or eating disorder program. It's going to make it harder because you've got to be around other people. In an addiction, the frontal lobe is not working. The only way to train the automatic part of the brain, which is 98% of the brain, is to get mirror neurons to copy other people. Mirror neurons will work. They've always worked. They've been working for 7 million years. They will never stop working. They will be working. They'll be trying to find people to copy with your last breath. So use that. Frontal lobe is 2% of the brain. It's not strong enough to control the feeding part of the brain. 98% of the brain is taking in information about what other people are doing and then literally stimulating those neurons inside of you. They are copy mirror neurons. They run your brain. And if you're around people who eat processed foods, or if you've had a traumatic experience in a support group and you just don't want to go back into a support group, I don't blame you, but there are safe support groups and we can help you with that.
Did you say that percentage again? Because it seems a little unbelievable. 98%
of the brain is working on the principle of look around and copy the people around you, do what they're doing. 2% of the brain is thinking wonderful thoughts and analytical thoughts and creating art. That's the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe does not direct feeding. And I'll tell you a little story that really illustrates this. Many years ago, but after I got into recovery, I went on a cruise. And I had been on a cruise before and I had been just devastated, shredded by the buffet. So as I got on the boat, I said to myself, you may not go up and look at the buffet. Don't let your brain know that there's all that food up there. And I know that sounds really wacky, but that was my frontal lobe being smart, analytical, protective, knowing that this primitive brain, the feeding part of the brain, once it saw all those people in that buffet line eating, it would not have let me leave without eating.
Wow. Yeah.
Cueing, triggering, reminders, signaling, messaging. This is how the food industry got us addicted. It's a really horrible marketing model called surround marketing. They addict the neurons with a couple of samples, and then they surround you with stimulation of those neurons. That is why people overeat. And that is the exact model that we have used in our surround recovery messaging programs, which people can get online.
Wow.
Okay, I think my overeating comes from genetics or childhood issues. If you believe that, you've got to go through a process of letting go of that and just say, okay, no, tobacco food just came in through Pavlovian condition, repeat exposure, 500 sugary fatty salty food cartoon commercials per Saturday morning. I never had a chance. But it is not from genetics. Yes, you have childhood issues. We all do. And yes, it's great to be in a program that works on them. But you have got to train those addicted neurons to stop reacting. And then you can work on your childhood issues.
Yep. So there are some genetic influences. So we can let the things that we do, our environmental cues, can actually impact our genes. So we're not defined by our genes.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We're defined by our environments.
Yeah.
And that we can control.
Yeah.
I've tried support groups, but it didn't help. So if you're not willing to put yourself in an environment with healthy people, the only thing I have found that works over 24 years of being involved in this field is to get that part of the brain which controls feeding by watching what other people are doing, to get that part of the brain into a safe environment around clean eating people. And you can do that over Zoom. We have found that to be very effective.
Yeah. I've said this before, but I told my kids, if we can't, when they talk to their friends, I told them to say, if we can't grow together, we can't chill together. Your environment has a huge influence over who you become and what you do.
Totally. So I just want to reemphasize, it's not your fault. It took decades for the food/tobacco industry to addict your reward centers. Be very, very patient with yourself. It may take, we have research on how long it takes to recover from drug and alcohol addiction. It's an average of 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Start by just becoming more aware of the 11 diagnostic criteria and the 10 factors that make it more difficult. It's going to take longer, more months, more years. And once you know that it's going to take some time, and you can just relax.
Yeah.
You're in a group of your group has to be fun, and has to be really, really nonstop uplifting, and really smart about cueing, and really, really smart about lapsing. Lapsing gets less frequent slowly over time, like over years.
Wow.
So thank you.
That was incredible and very helpful. And I think for me, as we kind of think about the big picture, and for those who are watching, what is it that you need to take away from these diagnostic criteria? And what's the website? They can actually go and do the test online. Which website should they go to for that?
Food Addiction Reset. Food Addiction Reset.
You can
take the little self-quest, the 11 diagnostic criteria, and they can sign up for our Addiction Reset community.
That's right.
I would be just so grateful to see. Every time somebody comes into the ARC, the Addiction Reset community, it's just like pulling somebody into a boat out of icy waters. It's such a moment of joy.
Well, it reminds me of what happens in my clinic, and when somebody's hemoglobin A1C for diabetes goes from 10 to 5, or when they look at the scale and they reach their goals, or when their kidney function improves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping, having had Amy Berger on talk about dementia, I'm hoping to see some people with dementia improve.
Yes.
I just shared some tips with a patient's family today about what they can do. So what we're trying to do with this nest and rope, and I kind of pushed you during the podcast to share what you were working on as it relates to the nest and the rope, is trying to understand that there are reasons why things happen in life.
Yeah, and it's mechanical.
And so if we can find a reason to explain why a person who eats the same amount of food, one gains and one doesn't, that's some hormonal stuff we can talk about. If there's a reason why that person is more or less motivated, we should take motivation out the word and say maybe they have a food addiction.
Yes, but, please.
You know what I mean? So we just have to work together. And support each other through continuous knowledge. And one thing I want to say to everybody listening, please become a learner. The good news is you don't even have to pick up a book these days. You can listen to a podcast. You can listen to a YouTube video. Most of the books, and I'm guilty of this, except for what I'm doing in my nutrition master's program, most of the books I listen to are audio. And Dr. Ifland, most of my lectures are also in a video format, so I can actually listen to my lectures whenever I choose to. So my point is, there really aren't any barriers to growth. It's a little scary, because who do you trust? Well, I would trust a person who's got a PhD and who has spent years helping people in the science of processed food addiction. I would trust her. I would trust that book that she put together, which I think is the foundation for all clinicians as we try to look at a patient in front of us and decide, how do we help that person? So this is a collaborative relationship. This is about you and I'm not just talking about me and the doctor, I'm talking about the people listening, working together to achieve our ideal state. We are not trying to get diagnosed and get treated. We're trying to never have those various medical conditions that lead to chronic disease. The good news is we know how to do it in a lot of cases. We don't always know exactly what the exact mechanism is for everything, although I think in this case we figured it out. But what we do know is that if we improve our diet, we take a break from eating periodically, we exercise, we reduce stress, we get enough sleep, all of those things I talk about in the nest, we avoid trauma. Don't, looking at the news every night is trauma to me. So stop.
I'm totally with
the
you.
news every night. It's not going to help you. How many knees in somebody's neck do you have to watch before you stop watching that? How many stories about COVID do you need to? So we have to protect our brains.
We have to protect our brains. The training to figure out how to construct your environment, how to get rid of cues. People don't know that things are cues, but like the toys that come home in the kids' meals, that's a cue. That's a craving cue. It's associated with those highly addictive substances. So do you mind if I mention the training that we do?
Oh, that's critical. So give people, tell them what because people are going to walk away from this and say, wow, I listened to the podcast. That was great. I listened to the post podcast show. That was great. I'm afraid my doctor doesn't know about this stuff. So tell them not just what they can do, but what resources can they point their clinicians to who may not have heard of any of this.
Yes. So clearly, if you're talking to a clinician, you've got to lead with the textbook.
Yeah.
It's 240,000 words, it's 2,000 citations, it's just methodical. But with the training that we have is at Food Addiction Recovery Advocate. And we are training people to take jobs. We're training them to create a business of taking care of 125 food addicted people. So because of my business background, I want to give people jobs.
Right.
I don't want to just train them and then, send them off. Not at all. I want to train them in how to market, how to talk to people about food addiction, how to persuade them to come in for treatment, everything that you need, all the websites and the workshops and everything that you need to build a business, because the need is desperate. And so somebody like you, Doctor, you would have somebody on your staff with this training, with the training that you need to talk to somebody and to build the video chats and the conference calls, the things that will surround your patients with that protective cueing. It's protective cueing. I like your image of the nest. Surround your nest with protective cueing, because if you don't do it, the tobacco and addiction, PhD psychology or marketing people are going to be doing it. If you don't take control of how your neurons are being programmed, those addiction scientists will do it for you.
Wow. And they get paid a lot. And when I leave the grocery store, I see all of these temptations at the right level, at the checkout lane and everywhere else, and it has been strategically designed. And I wish their goal was to just allow us to live a healthy life. But unfortunately, it is a corporation. I'm not mad at a corporation doing what a corporation is supposed to do. But I just want to live in a world where our fellow man and woman are also people we care about. And I think that what we have to do is push back a little bit. And then we're going to continue what we're doing, rather through this type of venue, a podcast, a Twitter, Facebook, whatever. We're going to do our best to let people know that there are people out there who care about you, who want what's best for you, and will give you the tools to help protect not only your personal nest, but those other folk that's in that nest that you are trying to protect as well. So I really appreciate your commitment to this. And I really hope that a lot of people get a chance to see this. So if there's any questions, there was a question that came up that I didn't really know the answer to. It looks like the term is Kayani. And when I looked it up, it said in its extremes in fortune, health, and spirituality, you're versatile and idealistic and intuitive. That was a that was the definition, but I think they are speaking of a product, but I had not heard of that. It's KYANI. So I'll look into that further after the show, and maybe at some point get back to Hope, who asked that question. But we appreciate all who tuned in live. We're going to let you get back to your crew, your family. I'm going to do the same. I got to go check on those ribs.
Yes, enjoy them. It's nice to know that you can, the whole, I don't know. I don't want to get into the politics, but yes, enjoy those ribs. People have been so surprised. You eat ribs?
Yeah, I love ribs. I was a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian for 8 years, and I've been low carb for 6. And I was known as the vegetarian doctor, so I still will see patients who kind of left and came back. And it's embarrassing because they'll say, Doc, you'll be proud of me. I've been vegan for 5 years. And then I have to tell them, well, I'm not quite there. But what I've learned through my functional medicine nutrition training is that there are multiple ways to get to the goal. And there are ways to eat anyway that won't harm you. That's real food. That's not addictive. It's really just about eating real food. And if your body can tolerate a little bit more in the starch category because you're not insulin resistant, that's totally fine. It's all about people where they are. And we use that term, I tweeted bio-individuality.
Totally.
And that's all about look at the individual. We're all made differently. And so we then need to be dealt with differently. So that's how I handle it. And I'm sure you do as well. So you have a phenomenal evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Low Carb USA.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
I'll be there. So take care and you have a great evening, okay?
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.